All right, welcome back. You're watching Daybreak. I'm Victoria Rubadiri. Still continuing our discussion this morning on growing the economy and how the manufacturing sector can help in boosting that agenda. Let me reintroduce my guests once more. Samuel Karanja, CEO of the Kenya Importers Association, Phyllis Wakiaga, CEO of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, and last but not least, Reginald Kazutu, who is an economist and financial analyst. And just as a parting shot for all of you, as we're looking forward and looking to the manufacturing sector to really kind of hold its weight when it comes to growing the economy. We've talked about the challenges, we've talked about the opportunities, areas of improvement as well. But what are we actually getting right, and what can we scale in terms of, what's working in the manufacturing industry? Phyllis, I'll begin with you.
I think one of the opportunities the COVID crisis has presented is an opportunity for us to look inward as a country, as a globe, as a continent, as we continue with our international trade, because we also cannot close borders. So as we move forward, one of the key things, I think, is how we nurture our nascent industries that we have identified during the COVID crisis. I must say that what went well is that government was very supportive to expedite approvals to ensure that people are able to manufacture the PPEs, the people who did ventilators, hygiene products within the country. So if we can continue with that speed and support towards local industry so that we can nurture and really grow the emerging business opportunities that we have identified. Also, Buy Kenya, Build Kenya, if we can see government procurement support and stimulate local demand, that would be critical. The other area to build resilience and sustainability and growth of manufacturing within this period and beyond COVID is really to look at the issues around policy stability. Without that, it would be difficult to grow the sector. So any of these policy changes that are really destabilizing the sector, like the ones I mentioned on minimum tax, excise inflation adjustment and other issues, we really need to introspect as a country on what our priorities are. The last one I'll be mentioning is the fact that as a country, we need to really support and work with SMEs so that we are able to grow our SMEs in the country and develop our agricultural sector and its productivity to boost the local value-added manufacturing sector in Kenya.
And Samuel, from your perspective, what else can be done? What are we actually getting right in this sector?
Yes, I thank the government for coming up with special economic zones, which are enhanced facilities to be able to, for small medium entrepreneurs to set base. And I think that's something that should happen in every county, so that each and every small medium business can be able to access to those facilities. And once they access to those facilities, they can be able to get the government services, which you get by you subscribing to those facilities. And I think that's what the government is doing. And having said that, but let me just say one thing. We should have capacity building for small medium entrepreneurs and the practical taxation policies which are able to enhance the small medium entrepreneurs to migrate from importation to local manufacturing. And once the government is able to do that, I think we are in the right direction.
And let me finish with you, Reginald. As I was doing research for this discussion, I came across some very interesting statistics that, spoke to the fact that manufacturing has been a big part of Kenya's story. And we've actually done much better in the past than we are now. When you're looking at the 80s, the contribution to GDP was 21%. It dwindled to 14% in the 90s. And now, it's roughly around 8%. We had a greater story, a more grand story when it came to manufacturing. How do we get back to that or even exceed the past glory days of manufacturing in Kenya?
Okay, Vicky, I think I'll answer that question with 4 points. Number one, informality normally grows when your economy is not doing well. So we cannot celebrate that we have a huge informal sector because it's a huge symptom that the economy is not growing well and it is not able to absorb people in the formal sector, because the informal sector is characterized with a low income. and also low productivity. And what do I mean by that? You have engineers, you have architects saving tables in restaurants. You have people who have done beautiful degrees who are selling airtime, who are selling mutumbas. Then that is education that is lost, and that is productivity that the country actually needs in the right area. So informal sector is actually a brain drain in Kenya. So brain drain is not only people going to the West, it's people moving to the informal sector. And until we realize that, then you realize that even the manufacturing sector also suffers from there. What do I mean? So of the 18 million that are employed in the country, only 2.7 million are in the formal sector. 15 million are in the informal sector. Of the 2.7 million that are in the formal sector, only less than 3% earn over 100,000 per month. So that tells you that the people, if you're in the manufacturing sector, your local market or your local demand in the market is less than 1 million people, actually even less than 500,000 people. So if the government cannot create a demand for the produce from the manufacturing sector, that sector is going to continue on the downward trend that it is currently facing. So we have ambassadors thrown all over this world, and sometimes I wonder what we pay those ambassadors for if they're not creating markets for Kenyan manufactured goods. So if we are going to go back to the glory days, one, we need to have a holistic approach to the manufacturing sector. Currently, 80% to 90% of the manufacturing sector is agro-processing. But if you look at the main source of this agro-processing, the agricultural sector, the investment going into that sector has been reducing year by year, leaving us to the extent that we have to import inputs, which makes our products even more expensive. So if we are going to go back to the glory days, is to look at these statistics that we have. And of the 15 million, by the way, 9 million of them are in the rural areas. So if the government now takes those statistics and say, we want to grow a manufacturing sector, then you realize from what base are we growing this manufacturing sector from? Then you start putting policies which are realistic to actually have a booming manufacturing sector as we go ahead. So I think we have a lot of policy confusion and burying our heads in the sand instead of actually saying 9 million of the people are in rural areas. We have a huge informal sector which can't be taxed, which is operating on minimum wage. We have no demand for this manufacturing sector. If you assemble Volvos here, how many Volvos are you going to be able to sell in a year? Is it a sustainable business for Volvo to keep their business operating in the country? No, it will not be possible. So those are the things that the government needs to put into perspective as they are coming up with a proper manufacturing policy for the country.
Absolutely. Food for thought. Thank you so much to all of my panelists, Samuel Karanja, CEO of the Kenya Importers Association, Phyllis Wakiaga, CEO of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, and Reginald Kadutu, who is economist and financial analyst. Great insights. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.